You are listening to Podolsky come to you to talk haunted Vermont. However, in this season, we're going to take a look at some very interesting folklore, urban legends, and some true crime. So, stay tuned and get your spooks on. What happened on a farm in Vermont that certainly changed around the hemisphere and farm animals that lived around this farm? We'll take a dive into what happened to this mysterious cow on a Vermont farm. These events occurred at a tranquil Vermont farm, a place scenic enough to grace any postcard or promotional calendar. Once again, this happened during the wintertime. It was wet, foggy night of Valentine's Day in 1984, the early hours at least. The scene of the crime, an innocent-looking barn, was part of Honeymoon Valley Farm, a successful dairy operation beautifully situated in Dummerston, Vermont, between Route 5 and the Connecticut River. Was owned by Robert Ranney and his wife Jody. The farm was hardly the sort of place to be visited by anything unnatural, right? Yet, the owner discovered a terrifying tragedy unlike anything he'd ever seen before. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, as always, he headed out after the milking the cows. As he walked past the barn where the heifers were kept, something caught his eye. He said, and I quote, "I saw one heifer that looked like she might need help, and I looked in the barn," unquote. What he saw was a nightmarish tableau, gruesome sight of the memory of which would be with him the rest of his life. 23 of his 29 heifers were dead. No blood, no wounds, no sign of a struggle, just dead. How could it be? Only a few hours earlier, all the little animals had been perfectly alright, and now, according to one account, they were lying in a perfect circle with feed still in their mouth. When he recovered from the shock, the first thing Mr. Ranney did was call his veterinarian. After examining the corpses, the vet couldn't escape an odd conclusion. The animals had been electrocuted. But try as he might, he couldn't figure out how it had happened. They had died instantly, he assured the owner. None of them had suffered. He could determine this because there were no signs of a struggle nor evidence the cows had tried to escape. Whatever happened must have happened very fast, instantly, making the deaths even more of a puzzle. Because of the value of the livestock, worth over $1,000, ahead, an insurance investigator came to inspect the scene. He agreed that all 23 cows had died instantly, probably by electrocution. He added that the killing could not have been achieved intentionally nor with which precision. Thus, he had ruled out foul play, but it didn't look like an accident either. So suddenly, the event took on an added layer of mystery. Then more investigators checked the scene, including electricians, but no one could discover a reason for the eerie electrical death. Mr. Ranney voiced a theory of his own saying, which I quote, "What it looked like was lightning. I've seen plenty of cows hit by lightning out in the field, and that's what these cows looked like," unquote. But there were absolutely no signs of a strike. The barn door remained closed. There were no scorch marks on the roof, beam, or floor, and none of the hay had ignited. More telling, perhaps, is that none of the dead cows has split hooves. Lightning will generally leave that mark if no other. So what happened? The most bizarre theory was put forth several days later by another examiner, an ex-policeman from Rutland, named William Chappelly. Mr. Chappelly inspected the scene on behalf of a private investigative organization called MUFON, which stood for the Mutual UFO Network. While scanning the area, he found a high radiation at the center of the barn in the cornfield where the cows had been buried. Noting the proximity of the farm to the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant in Vermont, the ex-police officer's first guess was that the animals had been killed by some kind of freak radioactive discharge. He soon learned, however, that Yankee had been shut down at the time. Then, having eliminated all possibility to his own satisfaction, the ex-policeman ventured that the animals had been killed by UFO. On the night the cow died, 4 people had contacted him about a torpedo-shaped UFO over the Vermont nuclear plant. Also, a mysterious ball of light had been seen that same night in the nearby Hinsdale, New Hampshire. According to the ex-policeman, no other explanation for the strange death has ever emerged. Nearly 30 years have passed and still there is no solution to this odd barnyard mystery, but there is a chilling footnote to the tale. The burial of the 23 cows had been bulldozed a big hole in the field, pushed the bodies into it, and covered them with dirt. Then they planted corn over everything. But, as weird as it sounds, not corn, not grass, not anything at all has ever grown on the circle that defines the dead cow's grave.